there's so much. It would be wrong for us this season, this period, not to act, not to take a step, towards realizing God's purposes for our lives. And if there was one thing that God must have used this whole lockdown pandemic season to accomplish, it is to energize, equip, and reposition his people so that they can actually pay attention to the purposes of God for their lives. And even testimonies have started coming, here and there, of how so many things, so many ideas, so many initiatives that God, put in some people's hearts well before, before the beginning of the year. But right now, they are now seeing that through this process, God has helped them to accelerate helped them to accelerate what has been put in their hearts over the years, over the period, that they have been listening to those messages that God has been equipping us. So it's very good and it's very important, and we thank God for that. Today we're going to look at a very important attribute, a very important component that we need as we, evolve God's purposes for our lives. And if you've been following, even some of the things we've been saying in iLEAP, we've been talking a lot about startups and creativity and how it's important for every believer to know how significant it is to actually go beyond just a regular career or regular ordinary business, to moving into world-changing initiatives, or being part of exercises, operations, projects, startups of some kind that is designed for targeting nation building, nation harvesting, and bringing so much, increasing the capital of God's kingdom. So we cannot just live our lives away. We cannot just live our lives away, day by day, rat race, without any overall kingdom agenda that is backing all that activity. And that's exactly what we're learning as regarding startups. That God has His purposes, designed for us. But before we come into that moment, that hour, God is supposed to take that ultimate step. He gives us a lot of things to occupy us, and that's why the Bible says, occupy till I come. So, occupy till I come essentially is saying that get yourself occupied in career, get yourself occupied in business, but I am coming, and my coming essentially has a lot to do with that divine idea, that divine agenda that God really wants to, bring to pass through each and every one of us. So yes, while you are confessing and knowing that yes, God has given you, made you a king of nations, a leader of nations, a billionaire, a mega successful corporation, a mega successful musician, while that is on, you cannot stay there and not get yourself occupied. So it is important that we continue to occupy, while we allow God to execute on His own brilliant agenda. In most cases, why a lot of people fail or give up is we often assume that it is by our power that we're going to be able to bring to pass God's agenda. So because we expect that, it's maybe something that we know today, or something you don't know, you limit yourself, you limit your imagination, as a result of something that you feel that you know or you do not know. So, but the kingdom doesn't work that way, because the person, the entity that brings purposes to pass is Christ Himself. It has nothing to do with you. It has nothing to do about you. So you don't have to overthink it. But God wants us to take day by day, step by step, occupy ourselves, in the meantime, pending when He comes, pending when He visits. And most of the time during the period of occupying, He starts to feed a lot of ideas. He starts to feed a lot of things into our spirit. And some of these things He feeds into our spirit
are the things that, these are little seeds that is sowing in our hearts, and we need to pay attention, give earnest heed to all these things, we need to be deliberate to know that, look, while I'm occupying, there is actually something God is building, there is something God is up to, and that I need to pay attention day by day, line upon line, to assemble that agenda. And that is why I think, from all that we've been learning this season, God telling somebody to step out, and that the fear of failure, is not, is going to only contribute to the fact, to the degeneration of the capacity of God that is deposited in us. So we need to step out in faith and, really start doing something, that thing that God has actually put in our spirit. So here I'm going to talk a little bit. If we open again, let's go back to the book of 1 Corinthians chapter 2. I'm going to be reading from 1 Corinthians chapter 2. Now, in 1 Corinthians chapter 2, Paul began to talk about something very critical to our walk of faith, and that is the subject of wisdom. Now, you remember when God, when Abraham encountered God, and he was given the promise of the nations. The Bible says that, if you look at what the Bible says in Romans chapter 4, the Bible says in Romans chapter 4, verse 3, for what does the scripture say? Abraham believed God, and it was accounted to him for righteousness. And to him who works, the wages are not counted as grace, but as debt. So it was the fact that Abraham had faith in God that literally created the whole value chain, of everything we're talking about. And beyond that, like the Bible is saying, that faith, because faith is like the currency of the kingdom, it's more like how we exchange, value here and get righteousness. What the Bible is saying is that when you feel it is just by your works, that you can gain access into what the kingdom is promising, it's more like, when you, the concept of debt there is, if you go to a store to try to buy something and you pay immediately, your transaction is settled, and then you get what you go there to buy. But if you say something like, I will pay you back later, then you have debt. Even though you want to get access to that thing, you have debt. So works, when you are trying to execute the agenda of God by your own abilities, then it's more like you're telling God, I will pay you later in faith, but let me just get, what I want. And because it is debt, that means that there are so many criteria, so many things you need to fulfill, following so many laws for you to actually get into that promise. But again, Abraham didn't get it that way, and that is the process, that God has been taking us through, letting us to understand why it is important for us to, pay attention to his word, and the fact that Abraham did not get, if you look at what the Bible says in verse 16, it said, therefore it is of faith that it might be according to grace, so that the promise might be sure to all the seed, not only those who are of the law, but those who are of the faith of Abraham, who is the father of us all. As it is written, I have made you a father of many nations, in the presence of him who believed. So Abraham got a major, promise of God, not on the basis of what he has done, but because because he believed in God. Now, one of the things you need to understand about this is this: the process that God takes us through, the process that God takes us through every time we want to, we walk with him. That process, now, the process we get through is essentially how God, works his righteousness in us. So what that means is that because God gives you a vision, and gives you something that is far bigger than you could imagine for yourself, that process of conceiving, of receiving something, that vision, that promise, that purposes of God that is far beyond you, naturally drives you through a journey. So the essence, like we said, is not because of When you see someone hear the gospel, and over time they receive a promise of God that tells them that they can come out of abject poverty and be a blessing, to nations, and be someone who gives cars, build houses for people. What happens there is not necessarily because of the final outcome, but what God is interested, as we know, is the process. And what happens is that God uses that same process to drive righteousness, into our life. And this is exactly what happened in Abraham. Because he believed he could get into that position that God has given to him, this itself became a process that credited his life with righteousness. So you could actually move about it in two ways. You could live your life, by following the law, or you could as well just go to God and receive the promises of God and believe them. And because you believe in what God can do in your life, you follow that process, and righteousness is imputed into you. And because God has major agenda, and God's agenda on the earth cannot be driven by going through the law. Again, understand what I just said now. Things can happen, day by day, but God's overall agenda, from ages to ages, from dispensation to dispensation, that is, for you to see generations move from one generation to another, age move from age to age, dispensation move from dispensation to dispensation. The law cannot accomplish that process. It takes the Abrahamic faith to cause world-changing events, to cause ages to shift. And that's why you saw that God started a new direction in Abraham. And you could see that it wasn't a case of, it could not operate that major shift, by just being someone that obeys the law. And every time God makes major things to happen on the earth, it is always a process of the Abrahamic faith that God can use to change dispensations. And that's one of the things we're now learning and seeing now, that why God is so particular as regarding his purposes, as regarding our walk of faith, is also because the dispensation that we have found ourselves right now, it is not, we cannot